And what in heaven's name brought you to Casablanca?
My health. I came to Casablanca for the waters.
The waters? What waters? We're in the desert.
I was misinformed.
He taught me, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
You're tearing me apart!
What?
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
It's the Al Travis Show. So lucky to have him on. He is Don Shelby. Don, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you again, because it was lovely to have you and your wife and your friends at the Chat House, and it was wonderful.
You and Nancy, that was such. And I'm sorry, folks, who you missed it. You missed it because you guys aren't doing this again, correct? The Levelers,
right? After 4 years, that was one of the last performances. We ended February 22nd.
It was such a great show. And again, I can say this now because no one can tell me I'm wrong because it's not going to happen again, but it was. Here's how this goes down. So we show up. It's a 2.5 hour drive for us down here. And
Right.
I haven't been going. It seems like a long time to go see a play. But we get there. My buddy Tom and I had a couple old fashions. They were fantastic. Dinner comes out. It was wonderful. We're having a good, grown up time sitting and chatting. And then the play starts. And folks, if you've not seen it, you'll have no clue. I guess I can probably give away the ending, but I won't. But we get to halftime, where then the big piece of cake comes out. So we're gonna have, we were indulging. I'll tell you, you had the big piece of cake come out, and the ladies, my wife and Brenda, were sitting there. They knew how this was going to end. They had written it out. This was going to be a Hallmark ending at the end, and they knew it. And they were just describing it tooth and nail. Then the ending comes. They're both crying at the table. Did not see it coming. It was like, wow.
Yeah. Very probably, I would say, and I spend a lot of time studying plays and theater, and this is probably the most unique play that has ever been staged. Two people, never looking at each other, never interacting. Sitting at separate desks, reading love letters that they had written from the time they were 9 years old all the way until they are our age.
Yeah.
And going through all of life's funny things and horrible things. And I think I might apologize that night. I apologize usually for two things. One, I apologize for Nancy's language.
I was going to bring that up. You don't expect Nancy Nelson to throw the Effenheimer out.
No.
It just shocks the crowd.
Right.
It's like,
and she often says, when we did the table read, and she saw she had to say those words because Nancy doesn't use those words, and so all of a sudden, here she is having to say these words, and I was protesting because I didn't get any of them.
you could tell. Oh, that is so funny.
But she was such a trooper and such a great actor that she was able to do that kind of stuff, and just it was wonderful. So I was glad of that.
The crowd gasp. I presume that's every night because you just don't expect it coming from her. But and literally, she goes out there
for it. And she in fact has said that she waits for it.
Yeah, that was fun.
So,
and then let me throw this out. I don't know that how many plays you can actually do this, but then do you and Nancy always hang around after and have that kind of
yes.
Q&A? Because that really is personal. A lot of people want to talk about your radios or your news days, but I thought that was so special that anybody sitting out there could just raise a hand and start asking Don and Nancy this stuff. That's something you guys did, or is that something pretty normal? I guess I haven't been to a play in a long time.
There are some stage talks associated, usually spotty, with some performances. So in certain crowds, press nights and things like that, then the actors will come out and break that fourth wall and sit and have a discussion. But this was it seemed right to the Chanhassen people because a lot of people came because they had either watched us on TV and wanted to know a little bit of our background and personal life. So it was, we did that. We've done it every show, probably 125 shows.
Wow, you probably get a lot of the same questions. I would ask, hey, any chance you'd want to have a cigar and a cocktail with me? I didn't ask a question. That's what after I see you do that, I go, oh, I'd have a cigar with him in a heartbeat. Okay, off topic. Let me ask you this, because this is where getting you back on, I'd ask, because I didn't know if you'd want to do it. We've been talking a lot about Chanhassen and that sort of thing. But would you talk about news of the day?
Sure.
And I threw at you Don Lemon. This is a couple of weeks. It seems like 100 years ago now, but it really wasn't.
Right.
We had the ICE stuff going on in Minneapolis. Don Lemon and some folks go into a church and they do their thing. He's doing interviews, whatever. Well, that becomes this huge thing. Was he being a journalist at that time? And I'm like, well, who do I know that would be able to answer that question? And Don Shelby's the guy. Yeah. You did journalism for 40 years. I don't think anyone's ever even questioned anything you ever did.
Yeah, 55 years. Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say anything question about your integrity on this. So I'd like your opinion on it if you're okay with that. What happened at that church? Was that news gathering-ish, or was it not?
Well, we have to back up a little ways because there are some facts that are missing that will come out at trial. So I have to, first of all, I have to be objective about this. I'm not immediately going to side with the press or immediately side with the federal government that brought these charges because I don't have all of the facts. I would be asking certain questions. I would ask this question.
There you go.
Was Don Lemon part of the planning of this event? If he was part of the planning of this event, if it was, I don't want to call it a conspiracy, but if it was an agreement that Don Lemon would be a part of this situation, a participant in this protest, you can question the laws under which is because it is also a First Amendment sort of case that the freedom of worship is a protected right, and you should not interrupt church service. However, on the other hand, ICE was interrupting church services. They were busting into churches where they felt there were undocumented people inside the church. They get yelled at about that, but they don't get charged about that. So the question is, was Don Lemon a participant? I don't know that. I don't know if there were plenary meetings going on ahead of time to which he was invited and he was giving advice saying, do this, do that, do this. And so he was partially orchestrating. I don't know that, so I cannot make a full judgment. If he was participating, then these charges are absolutely, they stand.
Let me ask you this: in your 55 years, would it have been? I guess I'm sitting here. Okay, that makes sense what you just said. Except for, were you ever invited to a thing or to part? You know what I'm saying? I guess since Don is no longer with CNN, where I presume you sit with editors and stuff and discuss what you're going to cover next, he's off on his own. So maybe he did. Maybe is it normal that if something's going to go down, they let the Don Shelbys of the world know, and then you can coordinate it? I guess I would find that shocking that he was in on it. You know what I'm saying? How would you find that out?
Being in on it and being tipped to something are two different things. One is you're a participant. One is you are being tipped off that there is going to be something that happens. So I've been in on search warrant raids and things like that because I get a source who calls me and says, we're going to go in on this guy, bring the cameras. There's a benefit to the police to have somebody present there.
Sure.
There are people who have called and said, we're going to protest the war in Vietnam on the quadrangle at 3:00 in the afternoon. That's a tip. They don't send out a press release, but somebody close to them says, you ought to be there. Bring a camera.
That makes some sense.
Yeah. So that's how you get leads. And because you're working sources, you're going to find out that things are happening. So if he was tipped off, if that was it, and his presence in that church was there as an observer, as a reporter, and as a journalist, then the charges don't stand. But if he was there as a participant, if he had been part of the plenary sessions, then there are big questions about that because that's not good journalism. You don't ever take a side.
Will this intrigue you to watch whenever this? It'll be years, I suppose, before they ever go to trial on something like this. Was this something Don Shelby would watch it because it could, I guess, potentially tar some of the image of the industry? Or is that something you'd be caring to watch and find out all that stuff you don't know yet?
Yes, I would probably not watch the proceedings. I would probably keep up with the filings.
Okay.
What do the police know? Were they surveilling Don Lemon? And then the question is, why are you surveilling Don Lemon out of all of the press? That becomes a question.
Yeah.
That they may have to end up changing their position in terms of a defense by saying, I was singled out. This was part of government overreach. This was part of a surveillance program. They were out to get me and to do anything, find me in any situation where they could charge me. Yeah. Or they find out that here's the evidence. He was at 6 meetings ahead of time planning this thing going in. I do not know, and I do not charge him with that, but the federal government believes that he did that.
It'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. I've got to go to a break.
Sure.
I would love to chat with you because you've sat through many of them, these first days of war, and even how that's changed and how we covered. Can we talk about that on the other side?
Sure, absolutely.
Boy, I am abusing Don Shelby today. More right after this on the Al Travis Show.
Chanhassen Dinner Theatres proudly presents Guys and Dolls, packed with comedy, romance, dazzling dance numbers, and unforgettable characters. This Tony Award-winning Best Musical takes you from the gritty streets of New York to the colorful cafes of Havana. It's a high-rolling musical spectacular everyone will love. Don't wait. Visit chanhassendt.com and grab your tickets today. Guys and Dolls, Chanhassen Dinner Theatres, always entertaining you.
If it's your turn to host a game, Grandpa's Barbecue suggests you try something different. Put out the perfect barbecue flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. Add it to your ribs, dip the meatballs, or drench your wings in the original flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. It isn't too hot or spicy, fruity or smoky or whatever. Grandpa's Barbecue. Available in select stores and online at grandpasbarbecueshop.com.
Al Travis Show, the last place you can go and hear all sides. Respectful, thoughtful, and grateful.
Grateful to have him. He is Don Shelby on with us today. Don, so just history for me quick. So in 83, I signed up for the reserves. 6 years later, I get out. 3 months later, the first Desert Storm starts. And that was like the start of CNN and live coverage of war. Because I remember staying up night after night watching the tracer rounds going up in the sky. And it was unbelievable television to me in that I was worried about the guys that I knew. Anyway, that's the first time. I watched what happened this weekend. And this is a whole nother level. They show some picture of a plane in the middle of no place with an X's on it, and you literally see the thing in it. I'm stunned. I presume you know what I'm talking about. The way we cover this now is 10 times different than we did a generation ago.
I'm shocked because when I was in uniform, I spent 4 years in uniform, and I did a lot of signals intelligence. I carried a top secret crypto clearance, and it was it's fascinating to me. You watch it with sort of a dread combined with a fascination.
Yeah,
it's like driving by a semi wrecked on a highway. Everybody slows down and gawks. You just can't stop watching because it is new. Of course, in the Gulf War, both of the deserts, you would see these aerial photographs, usually aerial photographs that the Pentagon was sharing of these targeting locations and then the explosion. And watching that, you watched it for the explosion. You did not think there are human beings in that building.
Yeah.
And so it was like watching fireworks. You didn't think about how do you make a firework. You just watched the night sky. So yeah, but when that was when CNN came up. Just a real quick story. So I'm working the CBS station at WCCO, and we had gotten word that the aerial bombardments would start probably around 5:30. So we were prepared in the 5 o'clock news to immediately switched to CBS coverage because they had Alan Pizzi on the ground in Iraq. And so we had 4 monitors. It didn't happen at 5:30. We came off the air. Then we went back and were just staring at monitors. CNN, which only had 3% penetration in the market at that time. Nobody had cable, right?
Yeah.
Cable was a brand new thing. But they've got Bernie Shaw there and John Holloman. And they're on the balcony of the Al Rashid Hotel, downtown Baghdad.
Yep.
And they've got their night scopes. All the stations came on for their 6 o'clock network news. NBC led with what's called a ballot. They were a slide of just a still of the reporter who was on the phone because they didn't have any TV coming out of there except that which they would ship later on by satellite, but nothing live.
Okay.
And so they're on the phone. Gary Shepard, NBC, he was doing his. CBS, man, rather, got nothing. He doesn't even have a reader. He doesn't have, there's no mention in the first section of anything happening in Baghdad. Everybody else, the other bigs are leading. The other two, ABC and NBC, are leading with the story, although it has no video.
Yeah.
Look over at CNN, this little startup company, and they've got live pictures.
Yes.
So here's what happened. The only time in my career, and I got in some trouble with Dan, we had many conversations about it later on, but CBS is on the air because I tell the news director, look, if we don't have, if Rather doesn't have it by the start of the second section, come to me live in the studio and be ready to act. And so the directors and producers are there. Dan comes out, some inflation story. I don't know, the economic story, starting his second section. And I said, come to me. Boom. They come to me, breaking news. And I said, I'm about to do something that will be unfamiliar to you and something I've never done in my life. Maybe has never been done before. But we're interrupting the CBS Evening News to switch you to a company called CNN.
No way.
And we switched and stayed with them for 6 hours.
Don,
6 hours on the air.
Rebel.
Yeah. Because my job is to get information to people.
Yeah.
I don't have any allegiance to CBS or Dan Rather, even though we're owned and operated by CBS. But I had to step in and go, no, here's the story. The story is over here. And we were affiliates of CNN because back then CNN didn't have a lot of its own reporters. It relied on regular reporters who affiliated with them. So we had the right to use that CNN. And boom. You were watching CCO, you were watching CNN, and there was only 3% population watching.
That's probably where I saw it then, was literally watching CNN on CBS when I remember that. I got to fly. I'm out of time. I love that story. That's why I love having you on the program. We'll talk more. We'll get you back on. Fair enough?
Anytime you want to talk. I love it. Journalism, whatever.
I love it, Don. Appreciate you very much. He's Don Shelby on the Al Travis Show.